basically may start in 1 minute or right now. So hello guys, pleasure to see you here. We will have some small communication about Manuscript to market, the transformation of publishing. And here with me the amazing people who will introduce them, the big names in the gaming and publishing. So let's move forward with introducing.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Katerina. As you can see, there is no company there just because I'm changing jobs, and in a week you will see an announcement on LinkedIn where I'm going to. But I will give you my background, like why I'm actually talking here, and I have right to do so. So I was working originally in gaming, first job in Ukraine. I was working in outsourcing companies where I learned the principles and basics of sales and biz dev in gaming. Then I moved to Germany and I was working at Gamigo, which is a PC publisher. And I was exactly on the side, like taking the games to evaluation and proceeding like with the publishing deals. The last 3.5 years I was working at Remote Control Productions. It's the company from Munich, and they are working with indie game development teams. So they have a family of developers, and I was on the other side of the business where I was actually approaching publishers and pitching games to them and trying to maintain different kind of partnerships and deals. So that gives me like the perspective from both sides, from publishing and then on the other side. And as for the last 3.5 years, I was daily talking to publishers, and I saw a lot of changes in their strategies. I guess that input might be quite useful and insightful, and I hope you will find it interesting.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephen Lee from DECA Games. I've been in free-to-play publishing for over 15 years, so I started off with an Asian publisher called Six Waves based out of Hong Kong. We were publishing social games on Facebook, if you guys remember that era. And then I spent a lot of time helping developers from overseas launch their games in Asia, in particular in China, Japan, Hong Kong, Korea. And now I'm based in Berlin, where I work for DECA Games. We're sort of known as the free-to-play division of Embracer Group. We have a very different model as a publisher. We actually help studios to look after their older games, which have already been launched and been in the market for many years, but are somewhat neglected, and we help to provide those players with the best experience so they can play their favorite games for many, many years to come. So very happy to be here.
I was working also in opening the microphone, so I was working in the developer in Ukraine from 2006. 16, and then I switched to the publishers. I had the opposite experiences. Katerina, I was speaking from the very beginning about the PC game with Tencent, with the big guys, and about the operating of web games, also with the Six Waves. And Stefan was the first person with who I communicated then, when the DECA started. So it's a pleasure to be with you here. And now I'm working with the mobile publishers like Apple, and we looking for the mobile games and have this struggle of updating the system to make it easy for people to approach with the game and for us to find out the best games, because not all of them are good, but there is still a lot of value in searching the requests. So we can go with the first question: how to adopt right now the strategies for publishers, and because there is the different stages of each game, and you need to adapt all the time to stay competitive. So please, guys, let's share some thoughts about it. Stefan, maybe from you can start.
Yeah, sure. I guess my experience more recently has been on free-to-play games, specifically free-to-play mobile. So I can speak about that. I guess if you go back even a couple of years ago, it was relatively easier to find a mobile publisher. If you're a mobile developer, you just have to have a pretty good-looking game and something playable and have a clear vision and a pitch. And those days are, I'm sorry to say, are completely over. It's a really tough time for the mobile industry, and nowadays, if you're a publisher, you're not going to sign a game unless it's already in soft launch, probably on Google Play, for example, with very, very solid KPIs, and you have to have basically a pretty strong plan for how you're going to continue development and live ops and updates. If you don't have any of those things, it's highly unlikely that you're going to find a publisher, just because of the way the market is. So there's so many launching a game is much more expensive, targeting is less precise. I'm sure some of the guys in the earlier sessions have talked about this. It's just really, really difficult to spend money on user acquisition now. So because of that, publishers are a lot more risk averse, a lot more careful about what they put into the market. The number of launches has gone down over the last couple of years and continues to decrease. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing from my perspective.
Yeah. But also, like, you can see that they try different strategies which can save like the cost, but still they cut in the test and yeah. So Katarina, please.
Yeah, what I can add, especially, let's say, so Steven covered the mobile part, I can add about PC and PC console. There's not a problem of not having a lot of releases. Actually, there are a lot of releases in Steam, like the numbers of launching games are rising. But if we're talking about business side of this, yeah, there are a lot of developers, and because of also the economical situation in the world, and in general, like after COVID, people stopped investing that much in gaming and spending that much money in gaming, because also those players who were stuck during lockdowns at home, they were spending money on entertainment, on games. Now they are back to their normal life, and they're spending money on something else, which means, of course, like there is a decrease in money input into gaming, and it affects everything. Investors don't invest that much as they used to. They're trying to be cautious, less risks. Then it comes and reflects exactly the same on the publishers. So they're not spending more money on development, on their games. They're trying to be also very cautious, less risk. So they will not go into genres that they don't know. They prefer to do something that is already proven, that they know how to do, they have a player base. So it's really rare when you can come to the publisher and they will like, oh yeah, we want to be innovative, let's try to find something completely different than we did. Or super niche. No, they will go to something that they know, they can prove, they have data on that, they know how to do like the marketing strategy, how to release these games, or something that was already proven in the market. Also, they have higher demands to the developers. So if you're coming as a new team, it's really hard for you to kind of break through unless you have super proven data on your project that it is going to be a success. They rather prefer to work with a team that already has a track record. And then, of course, like previously it was easier to fund the games from paper concepts, let's say. Right now it's also not the case. You need to have something playable. So as Steven was saying, like, yeah, you need to have some game in the soft launch. With PC games, yeah, you need to have some like really proven MVP or better vertical slice, or Steam page was already listed on a wish list and attraction from the community, which again proves them, okay, this is less risky. This probably will go and work well and perform well for us, where like ROI from the publisher side will be positive, and this, yeah, like, let's do this. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit sad, but there are a lot of things that you can do to prove your case, and then it's gonna work.
I'll just add one thing on top of what you just said. It's a really good point about the funding. So a lot of times when a developer is able to get funding for the project, when they launch the game, they're kind of screwed because the publisher that gave them an MG or whatever funded usually needs to recoup that before the studio sees any money. I have talked to some publishers that are trying to address this because they realize that it's really difficult for studios to stay alive, and I guess you guys have heard, you know, in the last year or two, a lot of studios have shut down. So one of the publishers I spoke with last week, they said, oh, actually we're now doing a little bit of funding, and then while they recoup their MG, the developer still gets like a small percentage of revenue share, like, I don't know, 5%, 10%, something like this. Not a huge amount, but it's still enough for them to kind of keep the lights on and keep working on the game as they continue to improve the product. So I think you do see some more open-minded publishers that are starting to be a little bit more flexible because they recognize that it's in their best interest for their developer partners to not shut down.
Yeah, and from a buyer perspective, I see like some studios, they make innovative decisions. They like continue to pay revenue share, but they just pay them like the standard fee. It's like in-house studio, but outside studio, so they want to have the good connections with the guys who are experienced, and a lot of publishers experimenting with how they approach. So they go with one studio like this, with another like that, and that's also the flexibility which is now on the market, as no money as easy as before the COVID. So everyone trying to be as good as possible and to like stay with the best people. That's why they adopted also this revenue share.
Yeah, and for the people that are here that came to this event when it was the Hyper Games conference, I think there's a lot of people in the formerly hyper casual space or hybrid casual space now. They are getting money from these bigger hybrid publishers to just continue to iterate. So we'll pay you a really low fee per month, and you, in exchange, you continue to rapidly iterate prototypes. And if one of them that we keep testing takes off, then we work together and we bring that to market, right? So that's another opportunity for developers and publishers as well.
That can make you sustainable and like be able to like swim in this sea of sharks. And maybe you can see like how the next models, next innovative publishing models which will arise, because as we talked, there will be like some combination of flexibility and friendly approach to the studios, but also from your predictions, what can also be done to be able to sustain this connection and update it.
Yeah, I guess there is no need to like reinvent the wheel or try to do something completely different. Let's say there was a new thing like a subscription-based games. To be honest, as far as I can see, the data doesn't work that well. So maybe it again proves the point, but better not to do that. Of course, in free-to-play, there are a lot of like new innovations and new things, how to tackle, how to play with the players, and it will still be there and be growing and be like updated and trying to find other ways. With the premium section, straightforward, you just need to be sure, like usually it's on the publisher side, not the developer side, to establish the price for your game, which makes sense in terms of genre, the scope, what are your competitors, let's say in a similar genre or niche, establishing as a price. Plus, I guess long term is one of the main things, because yeah, okay, you can have a success and like release the game, but then everyone wants this to run for many years. And then you need to think about, okay, how can I scale? If it's a premium game, right? With the free-to-play, it's a bit different story. And this is something that I also started to do with DLCs and bundles and different events. And again, like this is what publishers are taking care of. They are thinking, okay, how this game can be scaled further, even being a premium game, which you shouldn't ask players to pay for everything or every step to enjoy the game. But there are options, and then, okay, this is the way how to do it long term.
Yeah, I think your point of subscriptions is very interesting, which I'd love to add a little bit to. So I think maybe some developers here have spoken with an Apple Arcade or Netflix, maybe Meta or something. Yes, it is possible to get money from those larger publishers. I would probably call them platforms. But I think there's huge risk in that, because you're basically beholden to those platforms, right? And maybe one day they're just going to say, look, we're not funding any more projects anymore. The way they calculate the revenue is kind of a black box. The terms, especially for Netflix, are not really attractive for developers. So I think if you are a seasoned studio that has great experience in creating premium products and you feel confident to do that, you can do that. Just be aware that there's risk as well. So it probably makes sense to not solely focus on those subscription platforms.
But also like the Amazon sometimes work good for someone, so you definitely should try, but not stick to that will work or no. We had like experience working in Amazon, and it's working good. But then Amazon can say, we cutting down all these devices which you need to support, or you need to support extra low device, which is like hard to maintain the structure of the game to this. And
yeah, but when you're talking about Amazon, you're talking about as distribution platform, not as a platform to publish new games, because that apparently also didn't work very well.
Yeah.
but based on data, it's not my personal opinion.
There is some games which were released the first time on like Amazon store and then moved to the Google and Play Store, and it was interesting option, but just exceptions, not the main point.
Yeah, I think your point earlier about relationships is really important, right? So if you have a good relationship with these platforms and you've had some success before, absolutely, you can leverage that, and I think you might be willing to get some preferential terms. And I think the name of the game is just trying to figure out where, like, if you have the bandwidth and the capacity, try out your game on as many platforms as you can, if it makes sense, right? Because then you're just giving the game a little bit more chance to succeed, and maybe you're able to get some love from those platforms as well.
And you never know what can be the boost platform. Yeah. But also from perspective of what can be the good combination, we have some kind of the pool of easiness and hardness of the games overall, and like every game should be more complex. The developers should have more plans about how the game will be in 2 years, and if the publishers see that the team know what they're doing, they kind of understand how they want to go with the game, it will be much more easier to invest in product under which you're not sure. So you do an idleness, and there is the racing game with like the team who know where they're gonna be in 1 year, they have everything for ready. It's a lot of time, but still there is more options to be invested or like published if you have all this ready, not just like the good looking game or just fun to play game. It still should be more complex, and that can be the solution complexification of this, and making it harder to develop and make all these documents and everything, but still you increase the possibility of cooperation. So that's kind of
yeah, exactly, your USP. As I was just like a couple of days ago talking with some industry fellas, there are not actually like new genres that you can create per se. They're like already exist in all the genres, and everything new that is coming out is more like a combination and mix of what already existing. And this is kind of this innovation when people find like, oh, this could work very well, like shooter with arena. Sounds cool, and yeah, it proved the point. It is cool, and people love it. And when you approach publishers, I guess, yeah, what you're talking about, Roman, is very important to show you what is your USP, why your game will stand out. On top of being steady and less risky, that you know how to do this kind of games, but also find out, yeah, this is what market wants, this is where players will be attracted to the game or to the project, this is the gap. So market analysis, data, proven point, competitive analysis, everything, and you have a lot of information and resources to do that for both mobile and PC. And I guess new companies are being created around this because it's also important. Again, coming to the very first point of mine, that publishers are trying to be less risky, they want to be profitable, they want to have return of the investments in a positive and also like scaling. And here you're also bringing this cooperation, and you will be seen as trustworthy and serious partner, because you also see this not just like, not only as a cool, great, passionate project, but also as a business that can be sustainable and running, and then help both parts to do it successfully together.
I love that so much. As a publisher, I'd love to hear that. I think when we're meeting developers and they have not considered all of those things that Katerina just talked about, you're kind of just like, oh man, okay, this person obviously has not thought about, you know, how, like, it sounds really lame, but as a publisher, you have to think about, yeah, this game was cool, but how am I going to make money from it, right? So if I'm sitting down with a developer and they're saying, here's the market opportunity, I've done the analysis, and here's where the game fits in, and here's the USP, then that to me signals, okay, this person has done their homework, they know what they're talking about, and they have a plan for success, right? And I'm much more likely to listen to this pitch and fund it maybe, or publish it, than someone that just says, yeah, this is going to be this amazing thing, but I haven't thought about monetization at all.
And you ask them, what do you expect? And they like, it's the fun game. And like, sometimes it's going to be...
No, my best is like, but we like it, you know, like our team is super big fans of that. Okay, but what about the rest of the players?
You need to do the A/B testing and everything, and adopt the most useful strategies right now, and think about new ways, so it will be really showing off that you have the muscles, not only like in creating the games, but only in planning of the success. And maybe we can move on how to adopt the strategy of publishing with the cultural differences and like regional like interesting things which are on the market. Like even Google right now mentioning that games become more focused on the regional preferences or some cultural differences. So how do you see that in the future?
Yeah, sure. I have to come at this from my own personal experience, being based in Asia. I can't tell you how many times a developer has said, oh yeah, we're going to have a Chinese version of our game, and then I kind of have to stop them right there and say, okay, what do you mean by Chinese version, right? There's Taiwan, there's Hong Kong, which are both individually very, very significant markets, but are completely different from mainland China, and each one of those three territories has different writing system, different spoken language, different social graph that they're using for sharing. So, you know, that's just sort of quote unquote for China. And not to mention the rest of Asia, right? Japan, Korea, which are top 10 markets, and each one is completely different from the rest. So if you're thinking about Asia, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to Asia. There is no one publisher who can do all of Asia. So it's just a question of what kind of bandwidth do you have? Do you have the bandwidth to work with 3 or 4 different publishers for each territory, or do you want to focus on maybe like 1 or 2 that you think would give you the best possible success, right? Maybe there's a mainland China publisher that is really excited to work with you on your game. But I think there's no easy approach if you're really thinking about Asia. I can't really speak for Latin America or other parts of the world, but come and talk to me if you want to publish in Asia.
Yeah, it's really like crucial to have the experienced partner there, because there is some like Japanese game which is unreal to do it in other parts of the world, but in Japan they like skyrocketing, and like, it's so interesting that you cannot compete with the cultural code which is in the people's heads. And,
yeah, actually, a really funny story. Last night at the happy hour, one of my friends was talking to our China GM, who happens to be in Berlin this week, and he was like, "Yeah, we just randomly have players in China that have localized our game into simplified Chinese," and we're like, "How did that happen?" So I think you can also take cues, like if people are really passionate in some specific part of the world, and they just take it on their, of their own accord to try to do something in their local culture. That's a good like data point to have to say, okay, maybe I should be working with a local partner, or maybe I should do more to focus on this territory because there's obviously some diehard players there that really love my product. That's a useful kind of insight to have. But I would say like talk to your players that are local, but also see if you can find a local partner depending on how deep you want to go with the local publishing, let's say.
Yeah, and exactly. Of course, as a developer, you would like your game to be everywhere in the world. That in every country that can have access to a game will be enjoying it and playing it. And of course, like then again, business-wise, it makes sense. Your like diversification of your revenue, right, and your profits. But of course, as I learned it from the first day I was like working in the publishing, that you need to localize your game, and it doesn't mean to translate the game, it means to localize to the culture, to the traditions, what they like, what they prefer. It can be even art changes, like it doesn't mean that it has to be absolutely new art, but the changes in the facial, for example, representation or something similar, which for example in Amigo we were doing, and both ways, like from Asian countries to Western and back. And talking about like working with the local partners, of course it makes sense because they know their culture, they know how to do it, they have the people, and you don't need to like spend so much time and costs into doing it yourself. And I don't think that you would be able to do it like 100% accurately. And yeah, there are a lot of partners who can do that, and as Steven mentioned, you can choose either you can have a publisher who will take care of everything and you can focus on the game or something else like another project or other parts of the work that you agreed on, or you can actually do it even yourself. Doesn't matter if you are self-publishing or you have a publisher for Western markets, for example, but then you can find a partner for Latin America, for Asian countries, for Japan separately, because it's apparently also a very big difference, or from Southeast Asia, and etc. Because in the end, most of the publishers, they are working with these partners as well. And then for you, you will get just a smaller piece of the pie, meaning because there will be shares with more steps. Otherwise, you can just directly work with these partners. And it's absolutely fine. You can give exclusive rights to a publisher in Western markets and then exclusive rights to someone in Latin America, etc.
And because I have experience with Africa, and it's good mentioning like for 1 year that the market is a little bit switching to Africa because there will be fresh blood, there like more new devices, more players, and like the people are growing up there and buying new phones, and there is now possibility to buy more powerful phones, so the market is growing. And we had one partner who created like Idol with the mobile boss, and he's like from Africa, and it's everything culturally covered. And it's so funny, you never see like so interesting, like the normal idol, but you feeling the passion because related with the cultural like soul, and it's like the game totally differently played. You want to watch more ads to have like new waiter. You want to have this boss come to your office for 30 minutes because he's so like fashionable. And I don't know, for me it's interesting to see how they adapt the mass market and put a little bit of the culture on it, and they just prepare you the normal product with these spices which make it really enjoyable. And I think if this will be evolving like this, we will have a much more cultural interest in games that this working, and let's do only these ones.
I have to ask, what game are you talking about?
It's Idle MOBA. I can share
Okay.
it with you, and it's like the guys have the small restaurant football team, and they try to do the idle game, and they succeeded in it, and it's interesting phenomenon. Maybe
Sounds epic.
but also like the difference between like in Europe there is the popular World of Tanks or something. In China I know they have the same stuff but with spells like World of Warcraft. So you play your tank as your character, you update it, you have the shields, the mana, and all this stuff, and it's kind of not in my head, but it's so epic and it's so like fancy that. I don't know how to adapt it without taking all these cultural differences, and the team who experiencing that, and they can do it for you, not to be done in research, because if you will try to research every culture, you will be just spending too much time for it. And like based on what DECA Games have a lot of experience to revive the game, like Phoenixes, can you like pinpoint the critical points on which you are looking for in acquiring the old IPs and re-entering the market, because it's really the wizard who can find the phoenix and revive it to have strong wings and fly higher. So what is your magic critical point?
Yeah, thanks. Someone just asked me this yesterday. I have to clarify that we're not relaunching the games in the market. So the games that we acquire have been launched years ago and they're still live. So, you know, there maybe, let's say they've had their initial launch and then they've kind of declined over time and then like sort of leveled off and not really close to the peak size anymore, but they're relatively stable. So I think, just want to clarify that, but in terms of answering your questions, the key ingredients or magic that we're looking for, obviously the same KPIs that most publishers are looking for, what's the revenue, what's the retention, et cetera, but I think that the missing piece, which most people don't pay attention to, is the community aspect. So when we are acquiring a game, we have to usually verify that there is a die-hard player base that is still coming back. I mean, it relates to retention, but basically if a game is not at its best anymore and the players are still coming back year after year, that gives us a lot of confidence that, okay, we can take this over, we can really put more energy behind it, and we've been able to prove that those players that are still loyal are able to help us grow the game by re-engaging their friends, by creating buzz around the activities that we're doing in the game. And I would say that's probably the number one ingredient for us as a publisher when we look for new opportunities.
So maybe you can share like the best practices which you had personally for you. I know that you had a lot of them, but from your experience, what was kind of the most interesting ones?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. I would probably say that we are basically looking at a game that we acquire as, okay, what has been done historically? What are the things that what are ways that we can improve the product that maybe the original team hasn't tried, or that maybe they always wanted to get around to doing, but they haven't had the capacity or the resources to do? And how can we set the game up for success in the long term? So having that mindset. So at DECA, when we consider a game, we ask ourselves, can we actually operate this game for at least 10 more years? And that's basically regardless of how old the game is. So most of the games in our portfolio are actually at least 7 or 8 years old. Some of them are way more than 10 years old. And so I would say it's basically taking that mindset, like, okay, how can we make sure, almost like taking care of your body, right? Like, how can I make sure that I'm going to be as healthy as possible for as long as possible? And these are all the little things. So it could be, for even our oldest game, completely rebuilding the game. The oldest game in our portfolio is, let me think, it's like 13 years old now.
Okay.
It was originally a Flash game, and at some point we were like, this Flash thing is great, but it's probably not going to last. So we completely rebuilt the game in Unity. We relaunched it. Thankfully, our community, because they saw that we care a lot about what they want to play and how much that they love the game, they basically converted completely from the Flash version to the Unity game, and the game continues to live on, you know, in good health. So that's probably the best example I think of.
There may be some first time playing players who were the first, they have the kids, and now the kids playing these games.
That's true, actually. There's a lot of games that people have sort of passed it on to their kids, and their kids are also playing as well. Yeah, that's true. It's sad to say, but yes, we're that old.
But it's good, like acquiring the organic users who are so loyal from the birth, and it's good. Katerina, maybe you have some like examples how to combine the legacy projects with the new IPs. Do you see something in the games with which you were working?
So the legacy projects, something that I saw among my friends from the publishing companies, what they do. So there were some successful games years ago. So our industry is quite young, but this already has its history. And there are these players who are very dedicated and loyal to certain games, and they loved it, which were, let's say, published 20 years ago. Now, because of the old engine, old backend system, and everything like art, it doesn't play that smooth and well, but still there are people who love it because they have some associations, they have nostalgia, and some guys, some publishers actually are looking for these kind of games to revive them. Either to do remaster or a sequel, or just, let's say, like pretty it up, make it like port to the new engine so it works smoothly, and then yeah, republish it. And again, you already have a player base, you already have a proven point that this game will work, and yeah, if you have on top some additional new audience, like awesome. And you can do that in a relatively fast and short period of time, and also quite cost effective. And I guess this is also very important for the publishers, and this is something that they try to do. So playing on the people's emotions, not only because the game is engaging, but also to play on this like, oh yeah, like I have some nice memories, like when I was spending time with this game.
You made me think of something based on your previous answer. So I think one thing that developers also ask us about a lot is IPs, and I think you guys have seen in the market that publishers that have access to a lot of capital can license really powerful IPs, and that helps make their games more successful. And you know, I think that is a strategy that developers can, especially indie developers, can consider. There's platforms for developers or companies to look for available IPs which are in the market. There's also ways to actually use IPs that are in the public domain, so like fairy tales or things that you don't have to actually pay to license.
Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, exactly. Mickey Mouse, Alice in Wonderland, whatever. Like these are in the public domain. They resonate with players. It's a little bit off topic, but you kind of mentioned legacy stuff. So if you have a way, an angle to appeal to players through brand recognition, that could also be something that publishers are also very attracted to. Like, oh yeah, I like that. I've always wanted a game with this such and such IP or whatever. So.
Like Monopoly Go, they doubled the results of Pokemon Go just because they have the Monopoly players, and that's like the idea. But with Warhammer, it's harder. Like every game on Warhammer is kind of crazy.
There's too many Warhammer games. I'm sorry.
And then only like the recent one was kind of
the Space Marine 2. Yeah, that was well done.
But others, like you ask everyone, is there any good Warhammer game? There is different answers on that.
And it still comes to the books, right? Not every book is like super great.
Yeah.
But yeah, IP licensing is also something that works very well. That's and there is like interest from the publisher side, and for developers it's a bit trickier because who is gonna pay for the license, how to set up the deal. So if you don't have that knowledge, it's gonna be harder. Of course, the publisher is taking care of that, great. But then again, like they will calculate this, how much then funding you will get, and how much revenue share you will get from which day they want, or maybe after the recoup, and after recoup of their investment, including the license. And some of the licenses are super expensive, and they will not ever give you like Marvel or Harry Potter, for example. It's really hard to get. But let's say Mattel just opened their publishing unit. Let's see how it goes, because Hasbro proved that for IP holders it's not the best to try to do that, rather just like stay standard and out license. But maybe Mattel will prove strong, and maybe they will also come and bring back some older IPs that again like will give the opportunity to focus and attract new audience that were not gamers before, but because they love the IP, they will try to play. Maybe they will be even more engaged and loyal than traditional players in this sense.
And like the publishers who have already the powerful IPs, they just the legacy projects, they find the best which is working, they find like the best ideas on the market, create a new game, they already know how to do it, so that's the publisher side. And from the perspective that the definition mentioned, that like you can try the open ones, the free ones, and then see how it goes, because it will drive more people to your game, they recognize it easily, and then just, oh, this game is the husband, wow. So they just try it because it's fun, not and then understand that you put a lot of work, and there will be good results. With good results, you can go and have the funding, or find the publisher, or they will fund you. So that's the goal. And how do you see maybe right now the evolution of distribution models? Because we were talking previously about subscription models, about a lot of like iCloud gaming and everything. Is there will be, you think in future something, it should be, but what do you think it can be?
Yeah, I think for mobile, the thing that everyone's talking about is the DMA here in Europe, the Digital Markets Act. So because of that, there are actually, there's room for alternative app stores now. And so all the big publishers and developers are looking for, okay, where else can we bring our games outside of the Google Play Store, outside of the iOS App Store? Does it make sense for me to bring my game to the Epic Game Store, for example, or to other third-party Android stores? So I think it feels like everyone in the industry, in the mobile industry at least, is going through this exercise, like other mobile stores, or maybe bringing their games to web, or porting to HTML5, or bringing their mobile game to PC, or vice versa. So I think, and I think as players, we probably have all seen games that are now launching cross-play across multiple platforms. So if you have the bandwidth as a developer, or you're talking to a publisher that has the know-how to do that, it's again another way to grow the footprint of your game and bring it in front of more players in as many different touch points as possible. So it's an exciting time.
In general, like, distribution is a super great thing to do for your players, because you would like to give opportunity for every player to be able to access your game, and it comes from the country perspective, where are they located, from the device perspective, can the device support your game. And when you give this opportunity and you, like, let's say, knock on as many doors as possible to your players, and for them it's easy to access and connect to your game, that's better for you. It's also additional branding awareness, additional performance marketing in a sense. Also, like, I don't know if we're talking about Roblox, where you can just promote a game, which is like, is it distribution or more marketing? It's still like questionable, but again, they have 70 million daily active users, and you will approach 70 million people in one day offering your game. So you have higher chances that more players will come and play your game.
Oh, other thing I'll mention related to distribution is web shops. So if you're a mobile developer and you have not integrated a web shop, I think you're leaving money on the table. So if you want to know more about that, that's a total separate discussion.
Sure. Because I see that maybe the model of like Otaku using, they just give it the APIs with integration to their web service, so they overcome the stores totally, and they still like having a lot of play. It's because of complexity and specificity of what they do, but still it's this approach can be done with the games and like with the popular ones. Also, if you acquire the IP, which is free, you cannot do like promotions like Diablo in the McDonald's or KFC to give like the codes there, but you will still you will be able to reach to the big companies who will see interest in the IP and your game, and they can help you with promotion, with the money, because for them, the more ads they have, the better. And if it's successful game with some IP, it can still be one of the way how to distribute your game, like by reaching to not McDonald's, but maybe other big guys who can introduce your we see a lot of this on the cans, like of Coca-Cola, every film right now, they promoting it through the stores where we buy food, so why not do it with the games? We can try it. For the next one, how do you see the combination of the data-driven in publishing and also need for innovations? Like right now, most of the companies are data-driven, but they also consider them the innovation solutions. So how do you combine this need for innovation and creating something new, this approach of only the data-driven, so you need this game to be specifically with these KPIs, and that's all. You go to the compromise and try this if the team is so experienced and they have the plan how they will move with the game. Do you go for this compromise or are you more data-driven? It's complicated question.
I think I touched a little bit about this, but like can summarize my initial thought here. That you're trying to be innovative to find something that players will enjoy. Like it's not, let's say, another action RPG game, but you would like to try to do something interesting, some spin, some hook that will catch them and make them engaged in the game. The data here is kind of proving your point that we are thinking about this just because we decided so, or we are passionate about this genre, but it's kind of proving that actually there are high chances that it will work out and it makes sense. Especially if there are some competitors who try to do that and you're not copying them, clones never work, but you're taking something that works well, try to twist it a little bit, try to add something new, and then prove your point with the data. Usually, in most of cases, if you did everything, all the preparations, all the planning, all the analysis correctly, it should work.
Yeah, I would say listen to what Katerina said. The other thing is, I think it also depends on what type of game you have. So, for example, specifically for mobile, if you're planning to launch a mobile game, you have to be data-driven. There's no other way to do it. If you're not data-driven, you're going to fail spectacularly. I'd say just by nature of the different channels, so for example, if you're a PC or a console game, marketing and scaling those types of AAA games or premium games is completely different from free-to-play mobile marketing. So to that extent, maybe it's slightly less data-driven, but you should still be seeing what's happening with with player behavior and player engagement before you decide if you want to reinvest. But for mobile, you have to be data-driven. Sorry.
Yeah, you can. I'm just made a complex question with multiple questions. But it's like, as we were talking, you need to be data-driven and show to publishers that you do the homework, because otherwise, like, you're a bad student, go from my class. And we can also add about localization. How do you see, maybe you have some examples of localization making the game successful, and how is it like right now? You need to do from the very beginning or like on some part of scaling. What is your thoughts about this?
I think it depends on your launch strategy, and I think if you're already working with a publisher, they can give you some guidance for that. There's fairly standard strategy in terms of how you should vote the minimum languages you want to localize to. If you're focused on, for example, tier 1 countries, then you localize to eFix, right? But I think you can. There's also some low-hanging fruit. So if English is not your native tongue, then of course it makes sense to develop the game in English, but also for your native tongue, and then maybe you'll have some traction with your local market as well, because that's super easy and you should be doing it anyway. But it really depends on how you plan to launch your game, and I would take the advice of your publisher for that one. But if you're trying to do like a global launch and you're focusing on tier 1, then you should at the bare minimum English, French, Italian, German, Spanish, Portuguese, if you want.
I can add a case. So one of the teams from Remote Control Productions, Chimera Entertainment, they have a game right now in early access, Songs of Silence. And a couple of weeks ago, they did a localization to Ukrainian language. So they didn't change much in terms of art or in the game, but they localized and translated the game and made it available for Ukrainians. And now Ukrainian market is one of the most boosting for the game. There are so many people who love the game, who already wishlisted it, who are playing the current available demo. And I'm sure that when the game is released in a very short period of time, this is going to help a lot. So that's actually quite successful case. You didn't need to do much because it's still a European country. But yeah, it helped. It was cool. And for another game that was from Lesser Evil Games, that's from above, which is like a very Ukrainian supportive game. They implemented Crimean Tatar localization. which is super unique, super cool. And of course, people from Crimea were very happy because you probably will not find that many games on Steam with Crimean localization, and that was special. Yeah, it's a drum game, yeah. So yeah, and it also like additional players, additional support, additional also branding to the developer and to the positioning stuff. Yeah.
I would also say one thing that you guys touched on earlier, if you're launching in specifically Asia, but also for other territories, check with the local publisher first before you do that. In a lot of countries, in particular Japan, it makes sense to consider changing the artwork or localizing the characters, the first-time user experience. If you have the bandwidth to do that, you can see a lot better results. Because sometimes if you are just localizing the text or the audio and the look and feel of the characters is not appealing to Asian players, it's just not going to catch on. So I would recommend consulting a local publisher for that as well.
And it also shows a respect to your audience, that you want to be as much close to them and as much as authentic as possible. So I guess it also brings them, oh yeah, they took care of this, or they thought of this, and it's also a very great gesture.
It's like not every game have possibility to find the community who localized the game, as you mentioned previously. I had just the example, there was a racing game, and it was like stolen APK, which was printing results, and we saw like peak of 300k downloads, and we see all the data, and it's from China. They localize it, they try to like work with it, but we still see the data. So it's interesting to see who is hacking your game and then localize it and make it like available there. You're missing out a lot. And you maybe know the solution, or know there is the US company which gives you possibility to monetize cheaters. Like you.
Oh yeah, they were on a panel with us last year. I remember. Yeah.
It was like you just integrate everything, and then people, like everyone is cheating on the gaming, but you say to them pay something, and you will have all your trillions in a game. And it's funny that like 27 or like something like that percent of the cheaters actually pay. So you're missing out 30% of the revenue from cheaters. That also can be the solution which can be integrated, but it's too complex. Yeah.
Yeah. So just for those of you that weren't on our panel last year, the insight from one of the panelists was we have security software in the game and we can catch cheaters. So instead of banning those players, we reach out to them and offer them to purchase something, and they will gladly make a purchase than to be banned from the game.
And you just like monetize the people who never be monetized, and it's just complex to integrate the system, but still after you do this, the game is secured, and you just buy one button like, hello cheaters, pay me, and they do it, and it's really fun. You guys maybe have any questions? We have a bit of time, so if you open and want to find out something, you are able to. We'll count to 5.
Actually, can I ask the audience a question? So,
Yes.
are there actually are there developers here? Or who here is actually a game developer? All right, great. And then, how many of you guys have self-published your games? Okay, cool. So that means some of you guys are doing pretty well. For those of you that are working with publishers, is there something that you guys have questions about, or feel like, oh man, like I'm not sure if this is, if, we're working with the right partner, or like feel free to fire away if you have questions or if you want.
Yeah. Just mention your pain, and because every cooperation can have some time of this. You don't see who is it, don't tell it, but you can like put it on the top list. Yeah.
Oh wait, someone in the back.
Well, I'm just curious about the Asian market. I mean, when you go to internet and try searching for publishers, there are a lot of phishing as well going on. So, how do you identify the right partner?
Yeah.
Did everyone hear that?
No, it was. They maybe don't hear it. So can you repeat, please?
Right, shall I repeat it?
If you hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it broken? Okay.
So are you referring to like China, or
Well, I
just
mean,
in
general in Asia, because I have no clue about the language and culture there. I mean, I can find who is doing phishing and not in Europe, but not in
Yeah, there's no easy way to do that. I would say the best way is to ask around. So talk to other established publishers, or let's say maybe you know someone, another developer in the industry that has worked with an Asian publisher and can vouch for that publisher. Usually people will just ping me and say, hey, have you heard of these guys? And I'll say, yes, I know them, they're doing well, they work with these guys. It can be really tough to do the research. It's more tricky than in the West because they have some random company name in their App Store account, which might not align with what the company that you're searching for online, for example. So it can be really tricky. So I would say talk to other publishers in the industry from that region, or friends that you've known that have worked with those people in that region before. So I'll say, yeah, like for sure these guys are legit. They know what they're doing. They've launched these games. Or I'll say, never heard of these guys, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily not genuine or for real. Maybe they're really gonna give it their best. But then you have to be very careful about the questions that you ask them and what they're promising and what you put on paper.
And also, who is speaking, it's better to have the local person, not to use Google Translator. When I was working in developer studio, we reached to the cheetah games, and we were speaking only by translator, and it don't ended up good. So yeah, just this cheetah.
No.
Yeah, so guys, thank you for being with us. It was a pleasure to communicate, and have a good day.
Oh.